The morning air in Maple Ridge Penitentiary was unusually still, as if the massive stone walls themselves were holding their breath. The corridors, normally alive with the harsh clatter of boots and the metallic echo of keys, seemed muted, weighted by anticipation. Every footstep, every distant clang of a cell door, pressed down on the guards and inmates alike, reminding them that today was no ordinary day. Today, the penitentiary would witness the end of a life, or so everyone believed. In the dim light of cell block C, Selina Hart sat on the edge of her cot, hands loosely folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the cold concrete floor. She wasn't the same woman who had been escorted through those doors 7 years ago. Life inside the prison had carved its mark into her. A faint silver at the temples, deep lines framing her mouth, eyes that had learned to balance defiance with quiet endurance. But beneath it all, there remained an unbroken spark, a stubborn thread of hope that refused to be extinguished. The guards expected the usual final requests. A call to family, a last meal, maybe a prayer. They did not expect what Selina would say. "I want to see Max," she said, her voice low but steady, carrying a calm certainty that silenced the officers in the room. A pause. The warden, Hughes, a man known for his pragmatism, raised an eyebrow. "Max?" he asked, cautious. "My dog," Selina clarified. "I want to see him one last time." A ripple of surprise spread through the room. The guards exchanged glances, their disbelief evident. A condemned woman, facing execution, requesting a dog instead of family? Unheard of. But Selina's voice did not waver. She did not plead. She did not explain. She merely stated a simple truth. Max was the only one who had ever stood by her, the only being who had remained loyal through every hardship before the arrest, the trial, and the sentence. The warden leaned back, steepling his fingers as he regarded her. He had seen unusual last requests before. A guitar, ice cream, even a priest who failed to appear, but this was different. Bringing a dog into a maximum security prison on execution day was unprecedented. In the control room, officers debated quietly. "It's a security risk," one said. "We've never allowed an animal inside, especially for a death row inmate." An older guard, quieter than the rest, spoke up, his voice carrying a weight of empathy. "Max is all she has left. No visitors, no letters, nothing. Maybe we should let her have this one piece." The warden requested the file. As the officers gathered around, scanning the pages, the record told a story of compliance and quiet resilience. No fights, no infractions, no escape attempts. Just a woman who had loved and lost and whose life had been interrupted by a single fateful night. And then there it was, Max, a German shepherd, 8 years old, seized at the time of her arrest. The thought of the reunion struck the room with a mixture of tension and curiosity. After a long silence, the warden nodded. Permission was granted, but there were conditions. Strict supervision, 10 minutes in the yard, no deviations from protocol. Word spread quickly through the block. Some guards shook their heads, some whispered about loyalty and love, about the bond between a human and a dog. But for Selina, those 10 minutes would stretch into an eternity. Somewhere, Max was on his way, and neither of them knew how transformative this reunion would be. The prison yard was quiet when Selina was let out, wrists cuffed loosely before her. Her gaze remained fixed on the far gate, a lone chair awaiting the moment she had dreamed of for years. And then, she saw him. Max trotted in, black and tan coat gleaming in the pale morning light, ears alert, tail wagging in a rhythm that seemed to sync with Selina's heartbeat. Even after years, the dog recognized her instantly. Time, gray hairs, stiffness in the legs. It all mattered little. The bond remained unbroken. The officers flanking him kept a careful distance, but their vigilance seemed secondary to the scene unfolding before them. Selena's knees bent, and she dropped slightly, allowing Max to surge into her arms. His head pressed into her shoulder, a sound caught between joy and grief spilling into the still morning. For a moment the prison ceased to exist. There was only the warmth of fur against skin, the familiar scent of Max, and the memories of long walks, quiet nights, and a life that had once been free. And then Max froze. The sudden rigidity was unmistakable. His ears pivoted, tail stiff, and a deep, low growl resonated from his chest. Selena felt the tension, the warning. Max wasn't looking at her anymore. His gaze was locked on Officer Thompson, standing 10 feet away, hands clasped behind his back, jaw tight. The growl deepened, teeth flashing. A silent but undeniable warning. Guards shifted uneasily. "Control your dog," one muttered, stepping forward. Selena's hand rested on Max's back, a calming whisper on her lips. "Easy, boy. It's okay." But Max's instincts did not lie. The growl was primal, unyielding, a signal of something wrong. Ramirez, a guard who had always treated Selena with quiet respect, stepped closer, voice low. "Your dog has a good nose. What's his problem with Thompson?" Selena kept her eyes on Max, careful not to show too much. "Max doesn't growl without reason." Ramirez's frown deepened. "Funny thing, Thompson was on duty the night you were arrested. Never mentioned it." The words hung in the yard like thick fog. Selena's mind raced. If Thompson had been there, why hadn't it been reported? As if drawn by the tension, Thompson moved toward the far end of the yard. Max's growl surged again, sharp and unrelenting. The warden, watching from his tower, called down. "What's going on?" No one answered. The air was taut, charged with unspoken truths. Selena realized, with a surge of clarity, that this was not just a farewell. Max's instincts had pointed to something larger, something hidden, and in that moment, the prisoner who had faced death with quiet acceptance understood a single thing with perfect certainty. This yard, this final visit, was not the end. It was the beginning of uncovering a truth that had been buried for years. The morning sunlight filtered through the bars of Selena Hart's prison cell as she traced the faint cracks in the concrete floor with her eyes. For 7 years, this routine had been her companion. Counting cracks, listening to the echoes of footsteps, and letting her mind drift to a world outside the cold walls. Outside, the wind smelled of pine and earth, carrying the memory of a life that had once been hers. And outside that life had been Max. Selena remembered the day she first met him. A scrappy black and tan German shepherd pup with oversized paws and eyes too wise for his age. He had been abandoned near her apartment, shivering and wary. But when their eyes met, something clicked. He had crawled into her lap, trembling, and she had whispered, "I've got you now. You're safe." The memory brought a faint smile to her lips. Max had been her anchor through everything, through heartbreak, family struggles, and the quiet, invisible pressure of a world that often misunderstood her. He had listened to her without judgment, had comforted her when the nights were too long, when the loneliness was unbearable, when the future felt hopeless. Selena's thoughts shifted to the fateful night, the night that had shattered her life. The evening had started like any other. The air had been warm, with the faint scent of rain on the pavement. Selena had returned home after a long shift at the Community Outreach Center, her mind buzzing with plans to start a small tutoring program for children in her neighborhood. Max had greeted her at the door, tail wagging, tongue lolling, as though the day had been just as long for him as it had been for her. She had cooked a simple dinner, setting a plate aside for Max. Then came the knock at the door, soft at first, polite, yet insistent. She had opened it to find Detective Sloane, a man whose face she barely recognized but whose eyes carried a weight of authority and suspicion. Behind him, shadowed and indistinct, were two uniformed officers. The memory made her stomach churn. She had protested, had asked why they were there. They had produced a warrant, vague and hurried, and spoken in a cadence that betrayed the urgency of their mission. A crime had been committed, a high-profile robbery, an assault and a death. And somehow, impossibly, the evidence pointed to her. Selina's mind replayed every moment in agonizing clarity. How they had searched her apartment, how they had taken Max, how they had ignored her protests, the way the neighbors had whispered, pointing fingers while pretending not to watch. She remembered the way Jared Keaton, a man she had thought was just a neighbor, had been unusually helpful, holding the door open, offering a placating smile. But now, looking back, she could see it. The subtle sneer, the way his eyes lingered on her apartment, the glimmer of something calculating behind his calm exterior. She remembered the courtroom like a cold theater, its sterile lights blinding, the murmurs of the spectators pressing down like a tide. The evidence had been circumstantial, but persuasive enough. The jury had deliberated for only a few hours before returning a verdict of guilty. And with that, her life had been stripped from her, leaving only the sterile walls of Maple Ridge and the memory of a companion who had been taken from her. Max had been gone from her side for 7 long years. 7 years of silent nights. 7 years of wondering whether the world outside still existed or whether she had been erased entirely. She could still feel the weight of his absence, the way his presence had anchored her to sanity. And yet, today he would be here. The thought was almost surreal. The guards had said yes. The warden had allowed it. 10 minutes. 10 minutes to feel the world outside the walls again. 10 minutes to remind herself that loyalty and love could endure even the harshest punishments. But Selina knew better than to allow herself complete relief. Something had always felt off about that night. Something that gnawed at her mind even as she hugged herself to keep warm in her cell. There had been shadows, fleeting glimpses of figures moving just out of sight. Evidence that was conveniently ignored, overlooked, or perhaps intentionally buried. Something about the way Jared had smiled, the way Detective Sloane had seemed distracted, the way Officer Thompson had lingered a moment too long near the scene. It had never added up. Max's instincts had always been sharp. He had a way of sensing danger, of recognizing deceit. If anyone could help her uncover the truth, it would be him. And today, as she sat on the edge of her cot, she could almost feel the connection stretching across time and space, the unbroken bond that had survived years of separation. Selina's mind wandered further back, to the childhood streets of Savannah, Georgia, where she had grown up. She remembered playing in the dusty yards, the scent of magnolia trees in the heat of summer, the way neighbors' dogs would chase one another across the streets. She remembered her mother, strict but loving, who had always insisted on teaching her the value of loyalty and justice, even when the world seemed blind to it. Those lessons had remained, buried beneath years of hardship and prison life, waiting for the moment when they could resurface. The thought of Max made those memories tangible. He had not just been a dog. He had been a link to everything she had loved, to the principles she held dear, to the hope that she might one day be believed. And now, in these final hours, with the execution clock ticking, she would have a chance to reconnect, even briefly, with the anchor of her soul. As the guards approached to escort her to the yard, Selina rose, her posture steady, her eyes clear. The nerves that had once gnawed at her like invisible teeth were tempered by focus. Every step toward the yard was a step toward hope, toward justice, toward the unraveling of a truth that had been buried for far too long. And in the distance, Beyond the high gates and razor wire, she imagined the sight of Max, tail wagging, ears alert, waiting for her as if he had never left. Little did she know, those 10 minutes in the yard would not just be a reunion. They would be the spark that ignited a chain of revelations, twists, and confrontations that would shake Maple Ridge Penitentiary to its very core. The past, Selena realized, was not finished with her. And neither was Max. The corridors of Maple Ridge Penitentiary buzzed with a strange energy that morning. Guards moved with unusual alertness, eyes flicking to one another in subtle signals that betrayed a mix of curiosity and unease. The word had spread fast. Selena Hart's final request had been approved. A dog. Not a call. Not a final meal. A dog. In the warden's office, Hughes sat behind his massive oak desk, a ledger of incident reports and inmate files open before him. Officer Martinez, who had always shown quiet sympathy toward Selena, stood near the window, her arms crossed but her posture relaxed. Thompson, stiff and unyielding, lingered by the door, jaw tight, fists unconsciously clenched. Her record checks out, Hughes said slowly, as if speaking aloud confirmed the truth. No fights, no infractions, no attempts at escape. And Max's ownership is verified. 8 years. Taken at the time of her arrest. He paused, steepling his fingers. Still, bringing a dog into a maximum security yard on execution day. Never happened before. Martinez stepped forward. With all due respect, sir, it's 10 minutes. Strict supervision. This could be the only peace she has in her life. Surely that counts for something. Thompson's voice cut sharply across the room. It's a risk. We don't know how the dog will behave. And there's the security concern. Other inmates could act on it or something could go wrong. We can't just bend rules because of sentimentality. Hughes regarded him quietly. There was a long silence, broken only by the low hum of the overhead lights. He had spent years managing crises, but nothing in his career had prepared him for a condemned woman requesting her dog. And yet, the ledger told the truth. She had been exemplary, disciplined, cooperative. Max was her only companion, taken away by circumstances beyond anyone's control. Look, Hughes said finally, voice firm. We'll allow it. 10 minutes. Full supervision. Leashes, cuffs where appropriate. Any deviation from the plan, and the visit ends immediately. He leaned back, watching Thompson shift uneasily. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir, Thompson muttered. But the tension in his jaw suggested he had doubts. Martinez's lips curled into a small, relieved smile. That's all she wants, she said softly. A few minutes with Max. Outside the office, the news of approval had already spread. Inmates whispered, guards exchanged hushed speculation, and even some of the higher security staff lingered at the edges of the yard, curious to witness what they had heard described as an unusual, almost impossible reunion. Selena was escorted toward the yard, each step echoing against the cold concrete floor. She kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, heart steady despite the anticipation that threatened to rise in her chest. 10 minutes. That was all she would have. 10 minutes to feel the warmth of her companion, to hear the familiar whine and pant, to touch the fur she had not felt in years. 10 minutes to reconnect with a fragment of life that had been cruelly stripped away. The yard itself was stark, concrete underfoot, chain-link fences stretching toward the sky, razor wire glinting in the pale sunlight. A single chair had been placed at the center, her designated spot. Officers positioned themselves strategically around the perimeter, leashes in hand, eyes alert. And then, as if the world had slowed just for this moment, she saw him. Max. The German shepherd's black and tan coat gleamed in the morning light, ears upright, eyes bright and alert. Even from a distance, he recognized her. His tail began a tentative wag, slow at first, then faster, as though measuring the distance between the past and the present. Selena's knees bent almost involuntarily as she lowered herself slightly to meet him. The years melted away in the span of a heartbeat. Fur pressed against her chest, warmth enveloped her, and a sound of pure relief, a whine, a sigh, a recognition, broke the silence. For a brief, perfect moment, the walls, the fences, the bars, the guards, and the countdown of the execution were irrelevant. There was only her and Max. And then, a subtle change. Max froze. Selena stiffened, following the dog's gaze. Thompson, standing 10 feet away, remained oblivious at first, but the low, guttural growl that rolled from Max's chest made even him flinch. The dog's tail stopped mid-wag, ears pivoted, eyes narrowing. Max had never reacted like this without reason. "Control your dog," one of the perimeter officers muttered nervously. Selena rested her hand on Max's back, whispering, "It's okay, boy. Focus." But Max's instincts were unwavering. He was signaling danger or deceit or both. Thompson's rigid posture, his avoidance of eye contact, seemed almost rehearsed. Selena's mind raced, memories of the night of her arrest surfacing in sharp relief. Why hadn't he reported something then? Why had he appeared so composed, so detached? Martinez, observing the scene, approached cautiously. "Your dog's got a good sense," she said quietly. "Something about Thompson. He's hiding something." Selena swallowed, careful not to show the fear rising in her throat. Max's growl deepened, and the dog shifted slightly, angled toward the far gate where Thompson's presence seemed most pronounced. From the warden's tower, Hughes called down. "What's going on down there?" No one answered immediately. The tension was thick enough to taste. Something unspoken hovered in the yard, an invisible thread connecting the past to the present, danger to revelation. And in that moment, Selena understood. This was not just a reunion. This was a confrontation of truth waiting to be revealed. Max's body was rigid, growl rolling like thunder across the concrete. Selena's pulse quickened. The dog had never been wrong. And now, in the moments before her scheduled execution, the truth was inching closer. The past, buried and ignored for years, was about to collide with the present. Selena drew in a steadying breath, hands pressed lightly against Max, and waited, because she knew, deep in her heart, that what would happen in the next 10 minutes could change everything. The prison yard stretched wide under the muted morning sun, a rectangle of gray concrete surrounded by towering chain-link fences topped with razor wire. It was a stark, lifeless stage, but today it would host a scene of something almost impossible. A reunion between a woman condemned to die and the dog who had been her entire world. Selena Hart stepped into the yard, wrists cuffed loosely before her. She kept her posture upright, shoulders squared against the nervous excitement clawing at her chest. Every guard in the yard seemed to hold their breath, every officer standing rigid, leashes taut, eyes scanning for the slightest misstep. And then, beyond the far gate, she saw him, Max. Even from the distance, she could recognize the familiar rhythm of his movement. Tail wagging, paws careful but eager, ears alert. Years apart had not dimmed his recognition. The bond was immediate, visceral. Max's eyes locked on hers, pupils wide, and the dog began moving faster, each stride carrying him closer to the center of the yard. Selena's knees bent as if by instinct, and she lowered herself slightly, arms opening for the dog she had missed for 7 long years. The world around her. Fences, guards, rules, the countdown of her final hours, fell away in that instant. Max surged forward, fur brushing against her chest as he pressed his head into her shoulder. A sound escaped him, half whine, half sigh, a release of years of separation and worry. Selena's hands moved over his back, feeling the familiar warmth, the coarse fur, the steady pulse beneath it. She closed her eyes, letting the moment stretch, knowing it could be over in 10 minutes, knowing it might never be this perfect again. The yard's silence was absolute except for the small, beautiful noises of reunion. Max's whines, Selena's soft reassurances, the faint scrape of the chair at her designated spot. Time seemed to slow, bending around them, until the yard became something sacred, a small universe where only they existed. And then, as if the universe itself had decided to shatter the illusion, Max froze. Selena's eyes followed him. The growl that rose from deep within his chest was low at first, almost subtle, but it quickly escalated into a sharp, warning roar. Max's body stiffened, ears pivoting toward Officer Thompson, standing at the far end of the yard, hands clasped behind his back, jaw tight. The guards shifted uneasily, sensing the warning in the dog's stance. "Control him!" one shouted, but Selena put a hand firmly on Max's back. "It's okay, Max, easy boy," she whispered, but the growl did not ease. Max was unwavering, signaling danger with every muscle in his body. Selena's heart sank and raced all at once. Max's instincts had never failed her. He had never misjudged a threat, never reacted without reason. Martinez, observing closely from a distance, stepped forward cautiously. "He's never done that," she murmured to one of the nearby officers. "Something about Thompson. I don't like it." Selena's mind raced. Her memories of that night, the raid, the confusion, the way Thompson had been present yet invisible, flashed in her mind like lightning. Something had been hidden. Something had been missed or ignored, intentionally or otherwise. Max was reminding her of it, pointing the way. The tension in the yard became tangible, almost suffocating. Even the other guards, usually unfazed by any situation, felt the electricity in the air. Thompson shifted slightly, avoiding Max's gaze, and Selena realized with chilling clarity that the dog's growl was not just fear or confusion. It was recognition of deceit, of danger, of guilt. Suddenly, a small commotion near the entrance of the yard drew their attention. A maintenance worker passing by stopped abruptly, eyes widening as he noticed the unusual scene. Max's ears twitched toward him, but then returned to Thompson. The dog's instincts were precise. This was about the person he was trained to protect, and he had detected a threat. Selena's chest tightened as she crouched slightly, whispering to Max, "Focus, boy, just a little longer." She knew every second counted. 10 minutes. It wasn't just time. It was a lifeline, a chance for truth to surface. Then Thompson took a step forward. Max growled louder, baring his teeth in a low snarl, eyes unflinching. The officers tensed. Something was about to happen. Selena could feel it. A storm gathering around the thin line between freedom and continued injustice. From the warden's tower, Hughes leaned forward, binoculars pressed to his eyes. "What's going on down there?" he called, his voice carrying across the yard. No one answered immediately. The dog's warning had frozen everyone in place, and for a moment, the entire prison seemed to hold its breath. Selena's mind moved faster than her words could. She had always known Max had a gift, a sense for danger that went beyond ordinary perception. He had never been wrong. If he was reacting like this now, it meant the past was not finished with her. It meant that the hidden truths, the pieces of her life that had been deliberately obscured, were beginning to surface. And then she saw it. A flash of movement, subtle but unmistakable, near the far corner of the yard where Thompson had positioned himself. The edge of a sleeve, a hand brushing against something metallic, the faint glint of an object he tried to keep hidden. Max stiffened further, growl vibrating through the air like thunder. Selena's breath caught. The dog had found it, whatever it was, something that could change everything. "Selena," Martinez said quietly, voice tight with anticipation. "He's reacting to him for a reason. Whatever Thompson's hiding, Max knows it." Selena nodded, eyes never leaving the dog. The reunion had been beautiful, perfect, but it had also become something more. A test, a revelation, a first step toward uncovering a truth that had been buried for years. In that moment, the yard was no longer just a place of farewell. It had become a battlefield, one where loyalty, instinct, and courage would clash against deceit, fear, and buried secrets. And Selena knew, with a certainty that steadied her heart, that she was ready. Max was ready, and together, they would uncover what had been hidden for far too long. The yard had returned to an uneasy calm after the initial surge of emotions from the reunion. Max had finally settled beside Selena, sitting alert but obedient, his eyes never leaving Officer Thompson. Every muscle in the dog's body remained taut, a living radar for danger. The officers stationed around the perimeter exchanged glances, whispers floating like static in the cold morning air. Selena ran her fingers over Max's fur, steadying herself. The joy of reunion was tempered by a gnawing suspicion. Max had never reacted like this without reason. Something about Thompson, something buried deep, was stirring the dog's instincts, signaling that the peace of this moment was fragile. Martinez approached cautiously, kneeling slightly beside Selena. "You've got a very perceptive friend," she murmured. "That growl, it's not just about a stranger. He's reacting to something familiar, something hidden." Selena's mind raced, recalling the chaotic night of her arrest. The sirens, the knocks, the way Thompson had been at the scene but had not reported it. The inconsistencies in the report. The overlooked evidence. The way Jared Keaton had appeared helpful, yet too calm. The puzzle pieces she had tried to fit together for years suddenly began to shimmer with clarity. "Do you think," Selena began, voice low, "he had something to do with it?" Martinez's eyes flicked toward Thompson, who now stood slightly apart, arms folded, jaw tight. "It wouldn't surprise me," she said quietly. "Max doesn't growl at people for no reason. If he's reacting like this, it's because he recognizes the threat." Selena's pulse quickened. She had spent years imagining confrontation, imagining vindication, imagining freedom, but never like this. Never in the open, under the eyes of dozens of officers, with her loyal companion warning her of a danger hidden in plain sight. Thompson shifted, glancing around as if sensing the scrutiny, and his hand brushed against the inside pocket of his jacket. A subtle movement, almost imperceptible, but enough to make Selena's gut tighten. "Selena," Martinez whispered, voice trembling slightly. "Look at him. That movement. It's deliberate. He's hiding something." Selena's eyes narrowed. Memories flooded back. The night she had been taken, the overlooked clues, the inconsistencies. Why had evidence been ignored? Why had witnesses been dismissed? And why had Thompson, present at the scene, never spoken up? Her thoughts were interrupted by the faint metallic jingle from Thompson's pocket, almost drowned out by the ambient sounds of the yard. Max stiffened again, growl low and steady, tail bristling slightly. The dog had smelled it or sensed it and was not wrong. A sudden commotion at the far corner of the yard drew the attention of the guards. One of the maintenance workers, passing nearby, paused abruptly, eyes wide, as if sensing the tension in the air. Max's ears twitched, but his focus never wavered from Thompson. Selina crouched slightly, whispering to Max, "Stay calm, boy. Just a little longer." She understood instinctively that this moment, fragile as it was, could reveal the truth she had been denied for 7 years. Martinez glanced at the warden's tower, where Hughes watched intently. "Sir," she called, "there's something off. Max isn't reacting randomly. He's recognizing a person, a threat. You need to pay attention." Hughes leaned forward, binoculars pressed to his eyes, squinting. "I see it," he muttered, voice tight. "Everyone hold position." Selina's chest tightened as realization sank in. This was no ordinary visit. This was not just a reunion. This was a test, a confrontation with the shadows of the past. Max was pointing the way, signaling that Thompson, or someone connected to him, had been involved in the events that had led to her arrest. Her mind raced. Could she trust the other guards? Could she trust anyone? Only Max had been steadfast, unwavering, loyal in the face of injustice. The dog had survived years of separation, had remained true when humans had faltered. And now, in this critical moment, Max was her eyes, her instincts, her connection to the truth. The yard seemed to shrink around them, the walls closing in, the razor wire above catching the morning light like glinting teeth. Time itself felt suspended, each second stretching into eternity. Selina's heart pounded, not from fear, but from anticipation. Every instinct screamed that the past was about to collide with the present, that the hidden pieces of the puzzle were ready to reveal themselves. And then Martinez, voice barely audible, whispered words that sent a shiver down Selina's spine. "The witness? Someone has just come forward. Someone saw a man matching Thompson's description leaving your apartment the night of the crime. They never reported it until now." The revelation hit the yard like a thunderclap. Officers glanced at one another, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Max growled, low and insistent, sensing that the moment of reckoning had arrived. Selina's pulse quickened, a mixture of fear and hope coiling in her chest. For 7 years, she had waited for this proof, vindication, the uncovering of the truth. And now, standing in the concrete expanse of Maple Ridge Penitentiary, with Max by her side, she realized that the long-buried secrets were finally rising to the surface. The dog had led her this far, and he would not be wrong now. The final 10 minutes of the visit had begun. And in that brief span, the first cracks in the wall of deception were starting to show. The interrogation room was cold, sterile, and suffused with the faint scent of disinfectant and stale coffee. Selina Hart sat at the edge of a metal chair, Max at her side, his eyes never leaving the door. For the first time in 7 years, she felt the stirrings of hope, cautious but persistent. Across from her, Warden Hughes sat with a thick folder of reports. Officer Martinez lingered in the corner, arms folded, while Officer Thompson remained seated stiffly across the table, jaw tight, hands clasped. There was tension in the air, an invisible electricity humming between them. "Let's start from the beginning," Hughes said, voice calm but firm. "A witness has come forward, claiming they saw Thompson at the scene of your arrest. Explain what happened that night from your perspective." Selina's mind drifted briefly, recalling the chaos of that evening. "I was at home, preparing lesson plans for my tutoring program," she began. "Max was with me. I heard a knock, then officers. Thompson was among them. They produced a warrant and took me in. I never saw any evidence directly, only the chaos and the assumptions made." Thompson's expression hardened, jaw clenching. "You're remembering this wrong," he said, voice sharp. "I was off duty that night. I just passed by. I had nothing to do with the investigation." Max's ears twitched. His growl, low but insistent, resonated across the room. He had never reacted like this without reason. Every instinct in his body screamed that Thompson was lying. Selina placed her hand on Max's back, whispering, "Easy, boy. Stay." Martinez cleared her throat, sliding a thin manila folder across the table toward Hughes. "We've re-examined the case files. Fingerprints, witness accounts, inconsistencies in officer reports." She paused, letting the weight of her words hang. "They don't match Selina's statements entirely. Some details point directly to Thompson's presence that night." Hughes leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Specifically, the fingerprints at the scene, previously attributed to unknown parties, were retested," Martinez said. "They belong to Thompson. Also, a neighbor reported seeing him leave her apartment around the time of the crime. The evidence was overlooked during the initial investigation." Selina's heart raced. 7 years of injustice, buried and overlooked, suddenly began to shift. Max pressed closer to her side, tail stiff but relaxed enough to sense her calm. He had guided her this far, and now the pieces were falling into place. Thompson shifted in his seat, hands tightening into fists. This is circumstantial," he said, trying to regain control. "I was at the building, yes, but I didn't commit any crime. You're misinterpreting this." Hughes shook his head. "We're not misinterpreting anything. Witness testimony, fingerprints, the inconsistencies in your reports, they all point to something you've been hiding. For 7 years, this woman has sat behind bars for something she didn't do. And now we have a reason to believe the truth was buried." Selina's chest rose and fell with anticipation. Every second Max stayed alert at her side, growling softly at Thompson, reinforced her belief that the dog had never been wrong. The years of isolation, of waiting, of longing for justice, all of it had led to this moment. Max suddenly barked sharply, a single, precise bark that seemed almost human in its intent. Thompson flinched. Hughes raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Selina?" Martinez asked. Selina's eyes flicked toward Thompson, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "He knows," she said simply. "Max knows you were there. He knows you lied. And he won't let me forget it." Thompson's face hardened, the first crack in his carefully constructed facade. "This dog, it's just a dog," he spat. "It doesn't prove anything." But Hughes leaned back, eyes sharp. "It's not just a dog. It's a witness in its own way. And combined with the evidence we now have," he tapped the folder in front of him, "we're reopening the case immediately. Effective today, Selina Hart's execution is delayed until further investigation is complete." Selina exhaled, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over her. Max pressed his head against her shoulder, tail wagging slightly, as if acknowledging the victory of the moment. She buried her face in his fur, whispering, "We're not done yet, boy. But we're getting there." Outside the room, the prison gates still loomed, stark against the morning sky. But now they no longer felt like the end. They were simply another barrier waiting to be crossed. Hughes stood, voice firm, addressing both officers. "Thompson, you are now under investigation. Any further attempt to interfere or hide evidence will result in immediate action. This is your chance to come clean." Thompson's jaw tightened, a cold fire burning behind his eyes. He remained silent, but the tension in the room was palpable. Max growled low once more, a reminder that the dog's instincts had never steered Selina wrong. Martinez turned to Selina, offering a small, reassuring smile. "You're going to be okay," she said softly. "We're finally seeing the truth." Selina nodded, hands still resting on Max's back. For the first time in 7 years, hope was tangible, real. The path ahead was still uncertain, but the first cracks in the wall of deception had been made. And with Max by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. The day had grown hotter. The prison yard bathed in harsh sunlight that reflected off the concrete like a mirror. Inside the control room, officers watched monitors with heightened attention, whispering about the unfolding events. Word of the reopened investigation had spread quickly, and the atmosphere inside Maple Ridge Penitentiary was electric, charged with anticipation, curiosity, and unease. Selena sat in the small interview room, Max at her side, both poised yet calm. Today, the walls no longer felt like a prison. They felt like a stage for revelation. Every sound, the shuffle of boots, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the distant clatter of keys, was amplified, each one a note in the symphony of truth about to unfold. Warden Hughes entered, folder in hand, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Officer Martinez followed, alert but silent, while Officer Thompson remained seated across the table, expression tight, fingers drumming against the metal surface. "We have reviewed the evidence," Hughes began, voice steady and unyielding. "The witness statements, fingerprints, and inconsistencies in reports all indicate deliberate misrepresentation on your part, Thompson. Explain this." Thompson's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Silence stretched uncomfortably. Max, sensing the tension, growled low, eyes locked onto Thompson's, body coiled with instinctual precision. Selena placed a hand lightly on Max's back. "He doesn't lie when it matters," she whispered. "And neither do I." Hughes leaned forward, tapping the folder. "You were present at Selena's apartment the night of the incident. Witnesses now confirm it. Fingerprints confirm it. Yet your report indicated otherwise. Why?" Thompson's lips pressed into a thin line. I didn't think it mattered. I was off duty. I didn't interfere with the investigation. I had no reason to report what I saw." Martinez shook her head slowly. "No reason to report? You were at the scene. You saw what happened. You ignored evidence, misled your team, and allowed an innocent person to be imprisoned for 7 years. Do you realize the gravity of that?" Thompson shifted in his seat, avoiding both Selena's and Max's gaze. Max's growl deepened, resonating through the room, a living warning that amplified the weight of Martinez's words. Hughes's voice grew colder. "We now have cause to believe that you actively contributed to a miscarriage of justice. Your actions or inactions directly resulted in an innocent person being sentenced to death." Selena felt her pulse quicken. 7 years of silence, of waiting, of wondering if anyone would see the truth, were finally culminating in this moment. Max pressed closer, his body vibrating with tension, a coiled force ready to expose deceit. Thompson finally spoke, voice low and defensive. I was following orders. There were complications. You don't understand what was happening that night." Hughes's eyes narrowed. "Complications? Or convenience? You stood by while a woman you knew to be innocent was taken from her life. And for what reason? Protection? Fear? Or something else?" Max barked sharply, the sound slicing through the room like a blade. Thompson flinched, beads of sweat forming at his temple. The dog's gaze was unyielding. Instinct and loyalty aligned perfectly with Selena's truth. Selena leaned forward slightly, voice calm but firm. "Max never mistakes danger, Thompson. He knew the night I was taken. And he knows you were there, hiding the truth. For 7 years, I've waited for this moment, and now it's here. It's over." Martinez stepped closer, hands resting on the folder. We have corroborating evidence. Witnesses, fingerprints, timelines, all pointing to you. Any further attempts to evade responsibility will only worsen your situation. The room was silent except for the low, rumbling growl from Max Thompson's face twisted, the thin mask of control slipping. His hands trembled slightly, a subtle confession unspoken but evident. Hughes leaned back, voice steady and resolute. You will be detained pending further investigation. Every report, every statement you filed will be re-examined. The case will be reopened, and justice will be sought. Effective immediately, Selena Hart's execution is delayed. You, Thompson, are now under full scrutiny. Thompson sat frozen, the weight of inevitability pressing down. Max let out a single, sharp bark, eyes unwavering, tail stiff with alert precision. It was a triumphant yet cautious signal. The first victory in a long battle, but a reminder that vigilance was required. Selena exhaled slowly, burying her face in Max's fur. The dog nuzzled her shoulder, a quiet reminder that loyalty had never wavered. We're getting there, boy, she whispered. We're finally getting there. Martinez smiled softly. This is just the beginning. But with Max here, guiding you, we're uncovering everything that was hidden. Outside the interview room, the prison buzzed with whispers. Officers exchanged looks, inmates glanced toward the yard, and the walls that had once contained injustice seemed to shrink in the light of truth. Selena knew the road ahead would still be fraught with challenges. The investigation would uncover more secrets, more lies, more betrayal. But for the first time in 7 years, hope was tangible. She had a chance to reclaim her life, to see freedom, to prove that loyalty, love, and truth could prevail against even the most insidious deceit. Max pressed closer, a living reminder that she was not alone. And in that moment, Selena Hart understood that the past, no matter how dark or twisted, could not withstand the force of truth and the unwavering loyalty of a dog who remembered everything. The control room of Maple Ridge Penitentiary buzzed with heightened energy. Monitors displayed multiple camera angles of the yard, the corridors, and key points around the facility. Officers murmured amongst themselves, their curiosity tempered by unease. Word had spread quickly. The case was being reopened, and Thompson was under scrutiny. Selena sat in the small interview room, Max at her side, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Even the low hum of fluorescent lights could not distract her from the sense that every moment counted. Hughes entered, his expression resolute, a fresh folder of evidence in his hands. Martinez followed closely, notebook in hand, prepared to document every step of the unfolding investigation. We've begun a full review of the original case files, Hughes announced, voice firm. Fingerprints, witness statements, timestamps, and officer reports are being cross-examined. Any inconsistencies are being flagged. Selena's pulse quickened. She had waited 7 years for this, and now every detail mattered. Max pressed closer, resting his head lightly against her knee, as if sensing the gravity of what was about to be uncovered. Martinez spoke next. We've also tracked additional witness testimonies. People who were hesitant to come forward before are now providing statements. Some confirm seeing Thompson near Selena's apartment the night of her arrest. Others report suspicious behavior at the precinct, tampered files, overlooked evidence. Everything points to a deliberate cover-up. Selena's eyes widened. 7 years of waiting, 7 years of silence, now finally giving way to revelation. Max's ears twitched at the sound of the door, his body alert, growl low but steady. The dog had guided her this far, and his instincts were proving invaluable. Hughes laid the folder on the table. Here are the newly corroborated statements, he said. Fingerprints at the scene, surveillance footage near the building, witness accounts. They all implicate Thompson's direct involvement in the mishandling of the case. We are beginning a formal investigation to fully expose the extent of his misconduct. Thompson, seated across from Selena, stiffened. His eyes darted between the warden, Martinez, and Selena, searching for any lifeline, any escape. Max growled, low and insistent, as if sensing the depth of the deceit. Selena spoke softly but firmly. Max never makes mistakes. He sensed it the night I was taken, and he's been warning me ever since. Every instinct he has, every reaction confirms that Thompson lied. And now, the truth is coming out. Hughes nodded. We've also requested a review of all officer reports filed over the past 7 years. Any anomalies will be scrutinized. Every report that mentions your case, every officer who was present, will be cross-examined. There's no room for oversight. Martinez glanced at Selena. With Max here, guiding you, and with the evidence we've gathered, the scales are finally tipping. Thompson's actions are unraveling. Max shifted slightly, tail stiff but controlled, eyes locked on Thompson. The dog's presence was more than emotional support. It was a silent guardian, a witness to deception, a catalyst for justice. Hughes leaned forward, voice dropping to a serious tone. We have a lead on the suppressed surveillance footage from the building near your apartment. If verified, it will confirm Thompson's presence at the scene. This could be the piece that finally breaks the case wide open. Selena's hands tightened lightly on Max's fur. 7 years of waiting, of enduring injustice, of clinging to hope through the darkest nights, were culminating in this moment. The dog had never abandoned her. And now, together, they were uncovering the truth that had been buried for too long. Martinez added, We've also discovered inconsistencies in the evidence logs. Certain items were marked as missing or mishandled. With Thompson's fingerprints appearing in some key locations, it paints a very troubling picture. Thompson's jaw tightened. He tried to mask the panic rising within him, but Max's growl, low and steady, reminded everyone in the room that instinct could not be denied. Hughes's eyes hardened. Selena, this is just the beginning. The investigation will continue around the clock. Every stone will be overturned. Every hidden truth will be exposed. And with Max by your side, the evidence is speaking louder than words ever could. Selena exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of 7 years begin to lift. Max pressed his head against her shoulder, tail wagging slightly, a small but potent symbol of loyalty and victory. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but hope was tangible, and justice was finally within reach. Outside the room, the prison continued its routines, but the undercurrent of tension had shifted. Officers whispered about the dog who had never been wrong, the woman who had endured years of injustice, and the unraveling of a story that had once seemed hopeless. For Selena Hart, the past and present were colliding, and Max was guiding her through the chaos toward the one thing she had waited for her entire adult life: the truth. The control room was tense, lit by the flickering glow of multiple monitors. Selena sat at the edge of her chair, Max at her side, alert and unwavering. The dog's ears twitched with every sound. The faint hum of computers, the distant clatter of keys, the shuffle of officers moving through the corridors. Every instinct in Max's body signaled that the moment of revelation had arrived. Warden Hughes entered, holding a USB drive and a folder thick with reports. We've recovered surveillance footage from the night of your arrest, he announced, voice steady. It's grainy, but it confirms the presence of Officer Thompson at the scene, contradicting his statements. In addition, other overlooked evidence has been verified. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Thompson, seated across the table, went rigid. His hands clutched the edge of the metal surface, knuckles white. Max's growl deepened, low and insistent, a warning that reverberated through the room. Selina placed her hand on Max's back, whispering softly, "This is it, boy. We're seeing the truth." Hughes connected the USB to the monitor. The screen flickered, and then the footage began to play. Grainy images showed Thompson entering the building near Selina's apartment at the critical time. His movements were deliberate, calculated, far from the casual, passing by story he had given. Selina's eyes narrowed, absorbing every detail. Max leaned forward slightly, tail stiff, growl low but steady, as if confirming every observation with unspoken certainty. The dog had been right all along. Martinez stepped closer, pointing to another segment of the footage. "Notice this," she said. "Thompson interacts with items later marked as evidence. They were mishandled in the initial investigation, but this shows direct interference." The weight of years pressed on Selina's shoulders, but with every frame, a sense of vindication began to bloom. 7 years of injustice, 7 years of waiting, were culminating in undeniable proof. Hughes's voice was calm but firm. "Thompson, your actions were deliberate. You attempted to conceal evidence, mislead your colleagues, and allow an innocent person to remain imprisoned. Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" Thompson's face twisted in a mixture of fear and anger. I was following orders. It wasn't my responsibility to act." Max barked sharply, a single, precise bark that seemed to cut through the tension like a blade. The dog's instincts had never failed, and now his warning was more than emotional. It was undeniable validation of Thompson's guilt. Selina exhaled slowly, pressing a hand to Max's fur. "You can't lie your way out anymore," she said quietly. "The truth is here. Max never forgets. And neither do I." Hughes nodded, turning to Martinez. "Prepare the evidence for immediate submission. Thompson will be taken into custody for further charges, and Selina Hart's case will proceed toward full exoneration." Outside the room, the prison seemed to pause, the walls themselves holding their breath. Officers whispered, inmates stared, and the gravity of the moment spread through every corridor and yard. Selina stood, knees weak but resolve unshaken. Max pressed closer, tail wagging slightly, eyes bright with anticipation and pride. The dog had never faltered, had never misjudged, and had now led her to the threshold of justice. Martinez smiled softly. "You've waited long enough, Selina. This is the start of your freedom." Selina knelt, burying her face in Max's fur, whispering, "We did it, boy. You never doubted. You were right all along." Hughes's voice cut through the room, steady and resolute. "With this evidence, we will clear Selina Hart's name. The investigation is comprehensive, and all charges against her will be dropped. Justice will be served." Max let out a small, triumphant bark, tail wagging more freely. Selina felt a surge of relief and joy, the culmination of years of endurance, loyalty, and unshakable hope. For the first time in 7 years, the prison no longer felt like a cage. The walls were no longer a symbol of confinement, but a backdrop to a story of loyalty, truth, and justice. And standing at her side, Max reminded her that even in the darkest moments, faith, perseverance, and the bond between a woman and her dog could overcome the deepest betrayal. The morning air outside Maple Ridge Penitentiary was crisp, carrying a soft warmth from the rising sun. Birds chirped faintly, an ordinary sound that felt extraordinary to Selina Hart. For 7 years, this world had been locked away behind concrete walls, razor wire, and the cold glare of fluorescent lights. Today, it would finally welcome her back.
Selena stood at the gates of the prison, Max at her side, tail wagging in controlled excitement, ears alert to every sound. The warden, Hughes, and Officer Martinez were nearby, finalizing the paperwork that would make her freedom official. Officers and staff, once indifferent or skeptical, now watched with a mixture of awe and respect. "Everything is in order," Hughes said, handing Selena the official documents confirming her exoneration. "You are free, effective immediately." Selena exhaled slowly, gripping the papers as if to anchor herself to reality. 7 years of waiting, of enduring injustice, of nights filled with uncertainty, were finally over. She looked down at Max, his eyes bright with unwavering loyalty. "We did it, boy," she whispered. "You never doubted me." Max nudged her hand gently with his nose, tail wagging more freely. In that small gesture, he celebrated not just her freedom, but the truth, justice, and the unbreakable bond that had carried them through the darkest years. From the corner of her eye, Selena noticed Thompson being escorted in handcuffs. His face was pale, expression tight with defeat. The officer who had once hidden the truth, who had allowed her life to unravel, was now facing the consequences. Max's ears twitched, growl low and warning, reminding everyone of the vigilance that had guided this journey. Martinez approached Selena, her smile genuine. "It's finally over," she said softly. "Your name is cleared. The investigation proved the truth, and justice has been done." Selena nodded, tears pricking at her eyes. "It's more than over. It's a new beginning. For me, and for Max." The prison gates slowly swung open, revealing the world beyond. Open sky, the distant hum of traffic, and the first light of freedom. Selena took a step forward, then another, Max at her side, both moving together toward a life reclaimed. Each step was heavy with years of memories but lightened by hope. As she emerged fully into the world outside, she felt an unfamiliar but welcome sensation. The air filling her lungs freely, the warmth of sunlight on her face, and the knowledge that her life was once again hers to live. Max barked lightly, tail wagging, circling her before settling beside her, his presence a living reminder of loyalty and endurance. Selena paused, taking in the scene. The years of fear, despair, and waiting were behind her. Ahead lay opportunity, healing, and the chance to rebuild. She looked at Max, kneeling to hug him tightly. "We made it, boy. All those years. We made it." Behind them, the prison stood silent, a monument to past struggles but no longer a cage. Officers whispered among themselves, acknowledging the remarkable journey, while Thompson was led away, silent and defeated, a stark contrast to the triumph of truth and justice. Selena stood, taking one last look at the walls that had confined her, then turned fully toward the open road ahead. Max trotted at her side, eyes bright and vigilant, tail wagging with unrestrained joy. Together, they stepped forward into the world that had been waiting for them all along. The bond between woman and dog, tested by years of separation and injustice, had endured. Loyalty had prevailed, truth had been revealed, and freedom long denied was finally hers to embrace.